My name is Mindy Briggs, and I'm 35. 5 years into a marriage, and it still surprises me how loud silence can be when the person sharing your bed no longer wants you. Not despises you, not argues with you, not slams doors or raises their voice, just stops reaching for you, stops wanting you, and somehow that emptiness hurts more than open conflict ever could, because there's nothing to confront, no obvious villain, no dramatic scene you can point to without sounding like you're exaggerating. Just you, awake in the dark, staring at the ceiling, replaying memories, wondering when your husband slowly shifted from partner to roommate without ever announcing the change. It took 2 full years of hearing the same sentence, the same 5 words delivered with casual consistency before it finally sank in. I'm too tired tonight. Sometimes he'd soften it with a babe at the end, like a nickname could cushion the blow, like affection after rejection was supposed to help. It didn't. When we first got married, everything was different. We were that couple, the ones people secretly groaned about, the newlyweds who couldn't keep their hands to themselves, touching under the table at dinners, brushing knees, exchanging looks loaded with meaning, laughing at jokes no one else understood. Late nights that bled into mornings, mornings that turned into lazy afternoons, random weekdays where we'd shut the world out and stay wrapped up in each other because we could. Inside our bedroom, everything felt easy, uncomplicated, alive. Back then, I truly believed we were immune to the thing everyone warned you about, that slow drift, that quiet distance. I had that smug certainty that whispers, "We're different. This won't happen to us. We won't become those couples who sit across from each other at restaurants scrolling their phones like strangers." The change didn't arrive all at once. It wasn't dramatic, it was subtle, like a leak you don't notice until the damage has spread. At first, he was just exhausted, and that made sense. We both worked demanding jobs, chased deadlines, brought stress home with us whether we meant to or not. So when he said he was tired, I believed him. I didn't push. I didn't want to be the wife who made everything about sex. I told myself this was what support looked like. You give grace. You wait. You understand. But waiting slowly became the norm. Not tonight turned into maybe this weekend. Maybe this weekend turned into this week's been rough. Then it was early meetings, long days, headaches, stress. The reasons kept changing, but the result never did. It became so predictable I could have written the excuses down and checked them off. Friday nights were too draining. Saturday mornings, when we used to stay tangled in bed, he suddenly had errands. Sunday nights were reserved for preparing for Monday. There was always something responsible enough that pushing back made me feel selfish. And every time I tried to initiate more than a quick goodnight kiss, he'd sigh, that weary sigh that made me feel like I was asking him to do a chore. I'm too tired for intimacy. Sometimes he'd reach for my hand afterward, like a consolation prize, like that was supposed to be enough. I'd lie there wide awake, my body buzzing with rejection, listening to him fall asleep within minutes, as if nothing had happened. Around the 18-month mark, I realized I was counting without meaning to. 2 weeks, 3, a month, lying next to my husband, staring into the dark, my thoughts spiraling. Is this normal? Do other married women live like this? Am I asking too much to want my own husband to want me? The worst part wasn't even the physical craving, it was what it did to my mind. Each rejection chipped away at my confidence. Maybe I wasn't attractive anymore. Maybe I'd gained weight. Maybe I'd become dull, predictable, uninteresting. I started studying myself in mirrors like I was searching for damage, tugging at my clothes, examining my face, my waist, my reflection, as if the explanation might be written there. Then I'd feel ashamed for even thinking that way because I didn't want to be desperate. I just wanted to be desired by the man who vowed to love me. Eventually, I forced myself to talk about it like an adult, a real conversation. No jokes, no passive-aggressive comments, no sighs in bed. One night, I sat across from him at our kitchen table, the same table where we once ate takeout while kissing between bites like we were still dating. Now it felt like a negotiation space. I told him I missed him, not just physically. I missed us. He didn't get angry. He looked uneasy, like I'd raised a topic he'd been hoping would resolve itself if ignored long enough. "It's work," he said. "I'm stressed. Once this project is done, things will get better." He said it like a promise, like there was an endpoint. I clung to that because believing him was easier than accepting the possibility that he was choosing distance. 2 months later, the project ended. Nothing changed. The excuses simply shifted forms. Same outcome, same loneliness. Same me lying awake at 2 in the morning wondering what I was doing wrong. I tried everything. I read articles about reigniting intimacy like I was studying for a test I never signed up for. I planned fancy dinners at the Italian restaurant where we had our first date, made reservations weeks in advance, wore perfume, dressed up, tried to resurrect the version of us that once existed. I brought home flowers on random Tuesdays, not anniversaries, not apologies, just because. I booked a weekend away in the coastal town we loved, the one with the lighthouse view, spending money we really shouldn't have because I believed a change of scenery might shake something loose. I took on more at home, too. More dishes, more laundry, more cleaning. I folded his shirts the way he liked, even though it hurt my back. I convinced myself that if I made his life easier, he'd have energy left for me. All it did was free him up for everything except me.
Eventually, the rejection hurt less when I stopped trying. But every time I dared to hope, dared to plan, dared to imagine us touching and laughing again, the disappointment cut deeper. Our 4th anniversary finally broke something in me. We went to an expensive restaurant downtown, the kind with candlelight and cloth napkins. He looked good, navy shirt, relaxed smile. Across the table, hope sparked in my chest like a match. Maybe tonight would be different. The drive home felt suspended in possibility. Inside the house, he kicked off his shoes. I stepped closer, heart racing, reading every movement. "I'm too tired tonight. Long day." Just like that. No hesitation, no apology. I got into bed and stared at the ceiling, the $300 dinner replaying in my mind like a cruel joke. That was the moment clarity replaced hope. He wasn't worried because he was used to me absorbing the disappointment. That night, I decided I was done reaching, done begging, done fixing, done making myself vulnerable just to be dismissed. I didn't know if our marriage would survive, and for the first time, I wasn't sure I cared. The next morning, he leaned in for our usual kiss. I turned my cheek slightly, not to punish him, just opting out. He looked confused. I smiled, grabbed my coffee, and went to shower. From then on, I stopped performing. I wasn't cold or cruel. I just stopped investing. 2 weeks later, while we were doing dishes, he asked if I was okay. I told him I was fine. He studied me like something had shifted, because it had. What he didn't know was that I had already started leaving, not with bags, but with my heart. The strangest part was how quiet my mind became. For 2 years, it had been a loop of self-blame and problem-solving. When I stopped trying, the noise faded. I redirected my energy. I stopped orbiting him, and that's when everything truly began to change. Didn't ask questions about my marriage or why I was suddenly obsessed with deadlifts and interval training. Monday, legs until I could barely walk. Tuesday, arms and shoulders. Wednesday, back and core. Thursday, full body circuits that left me dripping sweat. Friday, cardio until my vision blurred. Saturdays were long runs. Sundays were supposed to be rest days. I usually went anyway. Being tired on my own terms felt better than lying awake resenting someone else's. My body changed fast. Muscle where there used to be softness, shoulders stronger, waist tighter. I had to buy new clothes because my old ones didn't fit the same. The mirror stopped being an enemy. Sometimes I'd catch him watching me get dressed, standing in the doorway, pretending not to stare. that confused look on his face like he was trying to reconcile the woman in front of him with the wife he'd been ignoring. Good, let him notice. 3 months in, I started reclaiming the parts of my life I'd quietly given up. My friends had stopped inviting me places years ago, not because they didn't care, but because I always said no. Can't. He wants to have dinner together. Maybe next time. We were supposed to spend the weekend together. Doing what? Watching him scroll on his phone? When Alyssa texted about a Saturday brunch, I said yes without checking with him. I didn't ask permission. I just told him I'd be out. He looked up from the couch, surprised. Oh, okay. Like I was a roommate letting him know the bathroom would be occupied. Fine. Tuesday night, yoga became a thing. Thursday evening, photography walks downtown. I joined a local photography group that met Sunday mornings. Street scenes, architecture, people passing by with whole lives that didn't revolve around my marriage. I bought a second-hand camera and fell in love with it. I started noticing light again, shadows, reflections in windows, small, beautiful details I'd been too busy hurting to see. My calendar filled up, my life expanded, and for the first time in years, it didn't include him at the center. The first time he noticed wasn't dramatic. We were doing dishes side by side, the way couples do when they're trying to look functional. "You've been busy lately," he said casually. "Yeah," I replied. "Feels good." He paused like he was waiting for more, an explanation, an apology. I gave him neither. 2 weeks later, he finally asked the question, "Is everything okay with us?" I dried my hands, turned to face him, calm, grounded. "Yeah, why?" He frowned. "You just seem different." "Different how?" I didn't ask it out loud. I knew the answer. Different because I wasn't asking anymore. Different because I wasn't reaching. Different because my happiness no longer depended on whether he felt like loving me that day. "I'm just focusing on myself," I said. The words landed heavier than I expected. His eyes widened. "What does that mean?" "It means exactly what it sounds like." I stepped past him, grabbed my gym bag, headed for the door. That night, he moved closer to me in bed, not trying to start anything, just proximity, like he'd suddenly remembered I was there. For a split second, my body reacted on instinct, years of conditioning. Then my brain caught up. I stayed still, didn't encourage it, didn't pull away. I refused to take crumbs again. 6 months into my transformation, things shifted outside the house too. My confidence at work skyrocketed. I stopped second-guessing myself, stopped shrinking in meetings. A promotion came out of nowhere. Same company, new role, more responsibility. People started listening when I spoke. Funny how that happens when you're not constantly questioning your worth. Meanwhile, his behavior started to change. Little gestures at first, my favorite breakfast showing up on Saturdays, text during the day, an arm brushing mine in the hallway. I acknowledged each one politely, warm but contained. I'd been here before. This wasn't connection. This was reaction. The more I detached, the more he seemed to notice me. 8 months in, he tried harder. Candles in the living room, music playing, an outfit I hadn't seen in years. I walked in from work and stopped short. "What's the occasion?" I asked. "No occasion," he said a little too fast. "Just thought we could spend time together." We sat across from each other, not beside each other. That space felt important. He laughed too loudly at my jokes, touched my arm too deliberately. Everything felt rehearsed, like he'd watched a video titled "How to Win Your Wife Back in One Evening." When he leaned in to kiss me, I didn't pull away. I just didn't meet him there. He froze, confusion all over his face. "What's wrong?" he asked. I held his gaze, calm, steady. "Why now?" "What do you mean?" After 2 years of being too tired, why now? The silence stretched.
His face hardened. "I thought this is what you wanted." There it was. Not "I want you," not "I miss you," but "I want things to go back to normal." "This feels like you trying to get my attention back," I said quietly, "not like you actually want connection." He stood up abruptly. "That's not fair. I'm trying." "Trying now that I stopped trying," I replied. He left the room. I stayed there, sitting between half-melted candles, knowing something important had just cracked open. Because that night confirmed what I'd been afraid to admit. His sudden interest wasn't about desire, it was about fear. Fear of losing control. And that's when things turned cold. Not explosive, not dramatic, a quiet, exhausting cold war. He'd switch between affection and withdrawal when it didn't work. I stayed steady, not cruel, not accommodating, just done performing emotional labor for both of us. And then, one evening, looking for our bank account on his laptop, I found the emails, and everything I'd suspected finally had words. I wasn't snooping. That part matters. My phone was dead. His laptop was sitting open on the kitchen counter. I just needed to check our joint account. Rent was due, and I wanted to make sure the transfer had gone through. That's it. I typed in the password I'd known for years, pulled up the bank site, confirmed the balance, and when I minimized the browser, there it was, an email thread already open. Subject line, about life and marriage. My stomach tightened before I even clicked it. That little voice in my head, the one that had been right far too often lately, whispered, "This is it." I hesitated. I really did. There's a line you don't cross in a marriage unless something is already broken. Privacy, trust, respect. But then I thought about the 2 years I'd spent lying awake next to him, wondering if I was crazy, about how often he'd looked me in the eye and told me he was just tired. So I clicked. The thread went back months, messages between him and a woman he'd gone to college with. Not an ex, not someone local, just someone safe, someone he could be honest with because she didn't have to live with the consequences. The first message hit like a punch. "How are things with you and Mindy?" "Honestly, not great. I don't know why I can't connect with her anymore." I scrolled. I feel nothing when she touches me. Then I feel guilty for feeling nothing, so it's easier to avoid it altogether. My chest burned. She keeps trying. Dates, flowers, trips. It just makes me feel worse because I know I should want those things and I don't. I sat down without realizing it. Read another. "I don't think I'm depressed. I just think maybe I'm not meant for marriage. Like I need more independence than this." Another message, weeks later. Mindy asked me again if something was wrong, if there was someone else. I almost wish there was. It would be easier to explain. Instead, I just tell her I'm tired. Same excuse I always use. Same lie, same excuse. And then, sometimes I wonder if we married too young, if I missed out on experiencing more. She's a good woman, kind, stable, everything you're supposed to want, but I fantasize about being single, dating, having options. I closed my eyes. Options. While I was home folding his shirts, Googling how to rekindle intimacy, blaming my reflection for his distance, he was fantasizing about a life without me. His friend responded kindly, suggested therapy, suggested honesty, suggested talking to me, and every reply from him circled the same drain. It's complicated. I don't want to hurt her, I just need time to figure things out. Time while I stayed in the dark, thinking I was the problem. I closed the laptop slowly. No tears, no shaking hands, just quiet. There was no affair, no dramatic betrayal I could scream about, no villain to point at, just emotional abandonment wrapped in politeness. In some ways, it hurt more than cheating. At least cheating has clarity. This was him checking out while keeping me around for stability. The shared rent, the clean house, the appearance of normal. A placeholder. I stood up and walked into the bedroom, pulled a suitcase from the closet, started packing. Clothes first, toiletries, camera, gym shoes. Methodical, calm. He found me halfway through. "What are you doing?" His voice cracked in that way people use when they're pretending not to panic. "I'm going to a hotel for a few days." "For what?" Alarm now. "What happened?" I paused, zipper halfway closed. "I saw your emails." The color drained from his face. You went through my email? No, I said evenly. I checked our bank account. It was open. He sat on the edge of the bed, anger flashing, then collapsing into embarrassment. That was private. Yeah, I replied, and more honest than you've been with me in 2 years. It's not what you think. I held up my hand. It's exactly what I think. Silence. I zipped the bag. You've been unhappy and uncertain, I continued, but instead of being direct, you pushed me away while keeping me attached enough to maintain stability. That's not fair, he said, eyes wet now. Maybe not, I said softly.
But it's accurate. He didn't argue. I slung the bag over my shoulder. How long will you be gone? His voice was small now. I don't know, I said. I need to decide if there's anything here worth fighting for. And me? You need to decide too. I left. The hotel room felt strange at first, too quiet, too neutral. But the relief came faster than I expected. The uncertainty that had haunted me for 2 years was gone, replaced with something painful, yes, but clear. I wasn't unwanted because I wasn't enough. I was unwanted because he didn't know who he wanted to be, and that wasn't something I could fix by trying harder. The days fell into a rhythm. Morning swims before sunrise, 30 laps in an empty pool, just me, the water, and my breath. Work during the day, focused, productive, free from the constant mental drain of wondering if I'd said or done the wrong thing. Gym in the evenings, dinner alone or with friends, reading real books, sleeping deeply. He called every day at first. Apologies, tears, anger, accusations. I listened. Didn't chase, didn't reassure, didn't argue. By day 5, the call slowed. That hurt more than I expected. Was he adjusting already? Had he been hoping I'd leave so he wouldn't have to be the bad guy? On the 8th night, I went to a networking event downtown. I almost didn't go, but standing there talking to strangers who didn't know me as the wife, who laughed at my jokes, asked questions, listened, I remembered something important. I was still a person. Not half of a failing marriage, not a woman begging to be chosen, just me. When I got back to the hotel, I had 3 missed calls from him. His voicemail was raw. Please come home. I miss you. We need to talk. Those words would have sent me running months ago. Now I recognize the pattern. My withdrawal triggering his pursuit. Temporary correction, not transformation. I texted back, I need more time. The next morning, I drove to the coast alone, walked the beach in a heavy jacket, wind cutting through me, waves steady and loud, and standing there, sand in my shoes, salt on my skin, I made myself a promise. Never again would I shrink myself to be more lovable. Never again would I tie my worth to someone else's confusion. Driving back at sunset, I knew it was time to go home. Not because he asked, but because whatever happened next needed to happen in the open, from strength, not desperation. I checked out of the hotel on a Thursday evening, not rushed, not emotional, deliberate. The drive home felt different, like I was returning to a place I knew, but as someone new. The neighborhood looked the same, but my perspective had shifted just enough to make everything feel unfamiliar. He opened the door before I could use my key. He looked worn down, hair pulled back like he hadn't bothered to style it, dark circles under his eyes, the kind of tired you can't fake. For a second, we just stood there, 2 people who shared a life and suddenly didn't know how to stand in the same space anymore. "You're back," he said quietly. "I am," I replied, setting my bag down, "but I'm not the same person who left." He nodded slowly. "Neither am I." We sat in the living room, not too close, not too far. The rain started tapping against the windows, soft at first, then heavier, like the house itself was holding its breath. "I've been thinking," he said finally. His hands were clasped so tight his knuckles were white. "About why I pushed you away, why I lied instead of being honest." I stayed quiet. This was new. Before, I would have jumped in, reassured him, softened the moment, made it easier. I didn't do that anymore. At first, he continued, eyes on the floor, I really was exhausted. The promotion, the pressure, feeling like I had to prove myself every day.
I nodded once. But somewhere along the way, it stopped being about being tired. He swallowed. It became fear. Fear of what? I asked calmly. He took a deep breath like he was stepping into cold water. Of needing you. That landed harder than anger ever could have. My parents' marriage was a disaster, he said. You know that. I watched my mom give everything to my dad, her identity, her dreams, and when he left, she fell apart. I was 15. I promised myself I'd never let anyone have that kind of power over me. So you pushed me away? I said quietly. Yes, his voice cracked. I told myself I was protecting myself, that emotional distance was healthy, but really I was sabotaging us before we could hurt each other. And when I stopped trying, I asked. He looked up, then met my eyes. I panicked. The honesty hung between us. I stood and walked to the window, watching rain race down the glass. I can't go back to how things were, I said. I won't chase someone who isn't choosing me. I don't want that either, he said quickly. I want to try, really try. I turned to face him. Then it has to be different. No more excuses, no more hiding behind tired, complete honesty even when it's uncomfortable. He nodded. I want that. We didn't rush back into anything. I moved into the guest room that night, not as punishment, as protection. For 3 months, we lived with boundaries, weekly conversations, real ones, therapy-style honesty without a therapist in the room, naming fears before they turned into distance. Some nights felt hopeful, others felt painfully slow. More than once, I lay in the guest bed wondering if I was being too stubborn, and every time I remembered the 2 years I stayed put. 6 months later, we took a weekend trip to a mountain cabin. No phones, no work, no escape. We talked while hiking about childhood wounds, attachment patterns, the ways we'd both contributed to the silence. At night, by the fire, conversation came easier than it had in years. The second evening, he reached for my hand. I miss you, he said. Not us, not the routine. Me. That night we shared a bed again, not out of habit, but intention. Awkward, tender, real. The rebuilding wasn't smooth. Old triggers surfaced, stress made him withdraw, silence still made my chest tighten. The difference now was awareness. I'm overwhelmed and need space tonight, he'd say. I understand, I'd reply without taking it as rejection. A year later, we sat at the same restaurant where our 4th anniversary had ended in silence. Same table, different people. Do you ever regret it? He asked quietly. Walking away when you did? I thought about it. No, I said. It saved me. He nodded. And us? Maybe. Or maybe it just gave us the chance to rebuild honestly, or walk away with dignity. Either way, I'd learned something I'd never forget. Love isn't proven by how much you endure. It's proven by how much you're willing to walk away from to protect yourself. And if someone wants to walk beside you again, they have to meet you where you stand, not where you used to beg.